travels home. The hour was as dismal as himself. All the tales of ghosts and goblins he had heard that afternoon came crowding back upon his recollection.
One night while returning home from season,
The night grew darker and darker. The stars seemed to sink deeper in the sky, and driving clouds occasionally obscured them from his sight. He was now approaching a place where many of the scenes of ghost stories had been laid. Eventually, he came upon a small brook that ran across the road and down into a marshy and thickly wooded glen which is known by the name of Wiley's Swamp. A few rough logs laid side by side served for a bridge over this stream. But this was considered a haunted stream, and fearful of the feelings of the schoolboy who has to cross it alone after dark. As Ichabod approached the bridge, his heart began to thump. He summoned up all of his resolution. He gave his horse a half a score of kicks in the ribs and attempted to dash briskly across the bridge. But instead of starting forward, that perverse old animal made a lateral movement and ran broadside against the fence. Ichabod, whose fears increased with the delay, jerked the reins and kicked lustily with his feet. It was all in vain. His horse started, but it was only to plunge to the opposite side of the road into a thicket of brambles and alder bushes. Ichabod, he whipped the ribs of old Gunpowder, who dashed forward but stopped just by the bridge with a suddenness that nearly sent his rider sprawling over his head. Just at that moment, a flashy tramp by the side of the road caught the sensitive ear of Ichabod. In the dark shadow of the grove, on the margin of the brook, he beheld something huge, misshapen, black, and towering. It stirred not, but it seemed gathered up in the gloom like some gigantic monster ready to spring upon the traveler. The hair of the affrighted pedagogue stood up on his head in terror. It was too late to turn and fly. Besides, what chance was there of escaping a ghost or goblin?
Who are you? Who are you?
Once more, he cudgeled the sides of the inflexible Gunpowder, but he would not budge. Just then, the shadowy object put itself in motion, and with a scramble and a bound, stood at once in the middle of the road. It appeared to be a horseman of large dimensions and mounted on a black steed. It made no offer of molestation or sociability, but stood aloof from the side of the road, jogging along on the blind side of old Gunpowder, who now got over its fright and waywardness. Ichabod, who had no relish for this strange midnight companion, and remembering the story of Brom Bones and the Galloping Hessian, quickened his steed in the hopes of leaving him behind. The other quickened his steed to an equal pace. Ichabod fell back and fell into a walk, thinking to lag behind. The other did the same. Ichabod's heart began to sink. He endeavored to sing his song tune, but his parched tongue clove to the roof of his mouth, and he could not utter a single note. Announcing the rising ground, which brought the figure of his fellow traveler in relief against the sky, gigantic in height and muffled in a cloak. Ichabod was horror-struck on perceiving that he was headless, but his horror increased when he saw that head was carried before him on the pommel of his saddle. Ichabod's terror rose to desperation. He rained a shower of kicks and blows upon Gunpowder, in the hopes of leaving him behind. But that devil jumped after him. Away they dashed through thick and thin, stones flying and sparks flashing at every turn. Ichabod's flimsy garments floated in the air as he leaned his long, lank body over his horse's head in eagerness of his flight. They now pushed the road that leads to Sleepy Hollow. Gunpowder, who seemed possessed with some kind of demon, made an opposite turn and plunged headlong down the hill to the left. This leads to a shadowy grove surrounded by trees for about a quarter mile. That's the bridge. Famous in goblin story and just beyond. The red goblin was born on his haunches. An unskilled rider, the Ichabod one, he had much ado to maintain his seat, sometimes slipping to one side, sometimes another. An opening in the trees ahead of him cheered. In the hopes that that church bridge was at hand. He remembered the place where Bron Bones, his ghostly competitor, had disappeared.
Like if I reach that bridge, I'm safe!
Instead, he felt that black steed panting and blowing close behind him, and even felt his hot breath upon his neck. One last convulsive kick in the ribs, and old Gunpowder sprang upon the bridge, and even gained the opposite side. Ichabod. He now cast a glance behind him to see if his pursuer should vanish, according to the rule, in a flash of fire and brimstone. To his horror, that goblin rose up in his stirrups, and he hurled his head at him.
Stay